What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews. We've got a 10-game slate on the NBA. I've already got 4 bets I've already locked in that I'm going to share with you today. We're going to deep dive, and I'm pretty sure we're going to find some more bangers. Now, if that sounds interesting, let's go. Before we get into my picks, we need to recap the day that was. I shared a few picks on the video. I posted out a lot of picks. Let's just recap everything. I had a 7-3 day on straight bets. Cash Giannis over his assist quite easy. John Collins made a sweat, but he covered his points prop. We had Giannis under 4.5 turnovers. I told you guys I don't understand why it's so high, and it cashed pretty sweat free. We hit Murray under 1.5 steals and blocks. That was plus 135. That was easy as well. Stephon Castle over his points and assists. Zach Collins, I made that play late, but we cashed it over in his points prop and 15 plus points. And then Chris Paul under 8.5 assists. So it was easy money. VIP was 3.38 units up. But even if you just tell the plays from the last video in the deep dive, you would have been in the profits as well. Now, pushing out a code at the moment, use the code WEBACK and you'll get 50% off any VIP subscription. So I'll leave a link to that in the video description below if you want that. The VIP is pretty much every single bet that I place from my parlays, my risky things, and every sport. Whereas on YouTube, I'm pretty much restricted into what I can share. So feel free to check it out if you're interested. Now let's get into my bet. So jumping into Props Madness, it is the best tool for NBA player props. If you're interested in checking this out, 7-day free trial in the video description below. I've also created a beginner's guide on how to use this thing. I uploaded a few nights ago, so check that out as well. You'll also get 25% off if you use the code DAFT when you sign up for Props Madness. Now, I've got 4 different plays to go through today. Just trying to think through what they were. Here we go. All right, first one to the Hawks versus Blazers. Can't have the Hawks playing without me betting on it. And in this particular game, not touching Trae Young, not touching Jalen Johnson, going with Dyson Daniels here. And I'm taking his over 14.5 points. Now, he's covered this in 7 out of 11 games this season, averaging 15.3. But what I love about this Dyson Daniels look is, one, DeAndre Hunter looks like he's out for this game, which means more usage rate to go around for Dyson Daniels. But also his volume as of late has been crazy. I don't feel like this line is high enough. These last 4 games where he's been going off, there's really his last 5. Check out the attempts. Against the Knicks, he only scored 6 points, but he shot 16 times. He was 3 for 16. Then against the Pistons, 7 for 17. Against the Bulls, 7 for 15. Then 12 for 21 against Boston. And then against the Wizards, he was 10 from 14, efficient as hell. Just absolutely killing it at the moment. And if he can maintain that volume where he's taking 14 to 15 shots, I love it. Like last season, he didn't even take that many shots in a game. This season, putting up a lot of volume, the Hawks playing with a lot of pace. Dyson Daniels scoring a lot of his points in transition. And if you think about his matchup against Portland today, one of the worst teams in the league at defending transition. Bottom 7 in the league. That's 43% of Dyson Daniels' points right there. Just scored on the break, especially if he's getting all these steals. His steals line, by the way, it's at 3.5 now. So not one that I'm willing to play, but if he's going to get all these steals, that's going to lead to more transition buckets. So Dyson Daniels not only improving on the defensive end, but it's helping him out offensively as well. I think the other thing that works in our favor, looking at Jalen Johnson, who's going to get high usage, but he's got a somewhat difficult matchup when it comes scoring the ball. He scores a lot of his points in the paint. This Portland Trailblazers team only defends the paint. They don't defend anything else, but within the paint, they're actually pretty decent. And then we're going to talk about Trae Young. Trae Young's got a good matchup to score some points here today in terms of shot zones. The problem here is he scores a lot of his points in the pick and roll, and this Portland Trailblazers, top 10 in the league at defending the pick and roll as ball handlers. So what I'm calling out here is that neither Jalen Johnson or Trae Young have the best matchup for them to absolutely explode. Dyson Daniels got a better matchup. He's got great volume. I do like this. The over 14.5. I honestly did consider pivoting just to his first quarter points prop. It's got the very same hit rate. But ultimately just landed on the total points line for Dyson Daniels. Pretty good odds, plus 100 odds there for Dyson Daniels. So that's my first pick. My next pick takes us to the Charlotte Hornets versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is another plus money play here. No Donovan Mitchell for the Cleveland Cavaliers for this game. Hornets are on a back-to-back. I'm taking Evan Mobley here. His points line's up to 18.5. And I know Donovan's not there. That's not what I'm taking. I'm taking his assist prop today, 3.5. It's a plus money play. What are we getting? Starting to move, but plus 125 on Bet365 is what I got. Now, his line at 3.5, he's only hit this in 3 out of 13 games this season. So I know what you're thinking. Why? Like, why are you doing this to us? Well, pretty much no Donovan Mitchell actually changes a lot of things for this Cleveland offense. You'd think that it'll just be Darius Garland doing a lot more. It actually isn't. I've run the numbers. I'll show it to you. So this website's called Fantasy Labs. It has a lot of on and off court information, so you can see how players perform when players aren't there, pretty much on the court. So they can be within the game, but when they're not on the court, you get to see the difference. Basically, I've run the numbers here to look at all the Cleveland Cavaliers without Donovan Mitchell. And what was really interesting to find in terms of assist percentages, when we look at the differential, out of all the starters, Evan Mobley sees the biggest increase in his assist percentage when Donovan Mitchell is off the court. Whereas someone like Darius Garland barely sees an improvement, whether Donovan Mitchell's there or not on the court, whereas Evan Mobley sees a massive uplift, right? So he gets the biggest win out of that, a 10% increase in his assists. Another thing I like about this is we've got some data from last season that we can use to support this. Looking at the games that Evan Mobley played without Donovan Mitchell last season, check it out. 14 games without Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley averaged 4.4 assists. He covered this line in 10 out of 14 games. One of those games was against the Charlotte Hornets. He had 5 assists in that game. We only need 4 assists in order to cash this. Charlotte Hornets, still a shit defensive team this year. So I think Evan Mobley taking more control in the offensive end is going to lead to more assists for him. So I'm not going to touch his points prop because of Mitchell. I'm going straight to the assist, and it may not be a popular play. It's plus money, and the hit rate on this season is awful. So that might scare a lot of people away, but not me. I'm ready to get risky. I'm feeling confident. So Evan Mobley over his assist prop is a great play for me. I just realized I was sharing the wrong screen. Let me let me show you the numbers again. These are his assist numbers without Donovan Mitchell last season. 10 out of 14. 10 out of 14, 4.4 assists. Absolutely love it. And odds plus 125. So give me that Evan Mobley over his assist prop. My next one takes us to Detroit versus Washington. And I feel like this will be a popular play today, but it should be. And it's a bet on Jalen Duren up against Washington. Weak as piss defensively, especially in the paint. Now, I'm looking at Jalen Duren's points prop only. I'm not looking at his rebounds, anything like that. Specifically just points. Line's at 10.5. He's only hit this in 5 out of 12 games this season, averaging 8.4 points per game. Now, using props madness, I'm able to filter things out so I can see the type of matchup that I'm looking for. The whole thing here on Washington is they're really bad defensively, and they give up a whole lot of points in the paint, and they play very quickly. I can use these filters to look at the opponent's points in the paint allowed. If we look at how he's played against the bottom 10 teams, when it comes to points in the paint allowed, even if we go into the middle, we bought the bottom half, sorry. So we're looking at the bottom 15 teams in terms of points in the paint allowed. We can see he's covered in 5 out of the 7. There's a game here against Philly. He only played 11 minutes, got injured. Game here against Charlotte, played 8 minutes, got injured. So outside of the games he got injured, when the matchup is right here for Jalen Duren, it's a 100% hit rate. Now, I took this play not too long ago, actually. I might have taken it in his last game against Toronto. And it cashed once again. So I'm just going back to the well there. Jalen Duren over 10.5 points. The odds are starting to move slightly, but I got this close to plus 100. So more plus money magic on the way. So provided Jalen Duren doesn't get into foul trouble and he doesn't get injured, I could see him covering this 10.5 points pretty easily. This Washington team been giving it up to centers all year. My next one is in the game between the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks. Now, if you guys remember when I previewed this game last time, because these teams just played each other, I spoke about Josh Hart and his assists. I did like the over. I just didn't know whether to take it if Karl-Anthony Towns was going to be out or not. Karl-Anthony Towns didn't play, but Josh Hart got 9 assists anyway. So his assists tend to go up a little bit when Karl-Anthony Towns is on the floor, but just check out the consistency that Josh Hart's been putting together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games covering this line of 5.5. You'll get this for plus 105 as well. Karl-Anthony Towns might be back, but I still think it's a strong play. And if you look at similar types of players to Josh Hart, they've covered their assist line as well. This Brooklyn team forcing them assists up. They defend the pick and roll quite aggressively, which leads to a lot of players scored points scored off assists. So Josh Hart, I'm just riding the wagon here. I'm taking his over at plus money for him to do what he has been doing for the last 7 games. That's a very straightforward play. Give me that Josh Hart over 5.5 assists. So those are the 4 plays that I've already got down. Sent those out to VIP hours and hours ago. So if you're not a VIP, be sure to check it out. But now that I've got your attention, I ask that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment down below for the algorithm. You can say anything you like, but hopefully it's something worth reading because I'm going to read all these comments. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. Help your boy grow. Speaking of growing, We hit 12,000 subscribers, gang. We did it.
Splash.
12,000 subscribers. We made it happen. That last video that I put up, actually, that was like over 100 subscribers on its own. So that was pretty wild. So thank you to everyone who subscribed. Our next milestone is 13,000. Let's see how fast we can run up the board. There's a lot of big fish in this pond, and need your help to try to chase them down. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm dropping bangers like this every single day. Nobody puts out the same volume of picks. No one puts out the length of videos. No one gives you the insights and analysis that I can. So be sure to subscribe, and you'll see a lot more of that. Now, on the schedule for today, I'll take you through the first quarter props. A few comments about that. So the next section, we'll go through first quarter props. I'll take you through the ones with the highest hit rate so far in the season, and I'll let you know whether I think it's worth playing or not. Then we'll do a bit of a deep dive. We'll go through each game, talk about some key players. Anything else that pops up that interests me, I'll be sure to tell you. And I'll do my absolute best to keep this under an hour. Now, let's go. All right, we're looking at first quarter points. Have had a bit of success betting on these. Hopefully, you guys have been tailing. But what do we have? When we think about first quarter points, the first person I think of automatically is my man, Nikola Vucevic. And his line's still the same. It's at 4.5. Check it out. Your boy has hit this line of 4.5 points in 11 out of 13 games this season. It's just been an absolute wagon. I've bet this quite a few times. The odds for it starting to soften up a little bit, but at minus 120, I still think it's worth playing. Nikola Vucevic definitely won. Regardless of what the matchup is, I'll take it because this Bulls team's going to play fast. He's going to get his shots. He's going to play at least 8 to 10 minutes in the first quarter. Absolutely love this. And at 4.5, give me that. He's taking 3-pointers. He's hitting them. Up against Houston, his matchup, not that bad. They're pretty soft in the pick and roll because they're so aggressive with the ball handlers, which really opens them up to the big men rolling to the rim. In terms of restricted area in the defense, Houston, pretty good there. But, hey, we only need a couple of buckets from Nikola Vucevic in the first quarter to cash this. So I do like Nikola Vucevic. The next one I'm going to take you through is in the first game of the day. It's the Suns versus Timberwolves. Now, if we're looking first quarter points prop, this might be an interesting one, but it's Naz Reid. So his line's only at 2.5. And for Naz Reid, most of the time there's only one bucket because this man takes a lot of 3-pointers. You can see it in this graph. 39% of his points come from above the break threes. This Phoenix team, somewhat decent at defending it. But regardless, check this out. Naz Reid has covered this line in 10 out of 13 games this season. He's covered this in 5 consecutive games now. Absolutely love it. 2.5. If it was 3.5, I'd probably be a little bit hesitant because now we need more than one bucket. Whereas Naz Reid takes a whole lot of 3-pointers. If he makes a 3-pointer in the first quarter, this is money. The odds for it, pretty good too. Plus money here on Bet365. Fuck yeah, plus 115. Oh, I apologize if I swore, but I don't I don't script these things out, so I just kind of have to react on the spot. But Naz Reid over his points line in the first quarter, that's got my attention. I think the odds are fantastic. I'd take that every day of the week. If it's a 76% hit rate so far, if you bet Naz Reid to go over his first quarter points prop every game of the season, man, you'd be rolling in money. So I think that's a really good look. One that has a good hit rate, but I'm a bit hesitant on purely because I don't like betting on both of these teams. Miami and the Pacers. Very similar. There's like 4 or 5 players from each team who can give you buckets, and I can never tell you who it's going to be. But someone who has been performing very well in the season in the first quarter is Pascal Siakam. Check this out. 9 out of 12 games on the season, averaging 5.7 points. His line in this is 4.5, but he has cashed it out quite nicely. Challenge is he's up against the Miami Heat again. Last time, 8 minutes in the first quarter, 0 from 3, did not make a bucket. So does that have something to do with the matchup? Potentially. The matchup's a difficult one. He scores in transition and he scores in the paint. Miami, top 10 at defending both of those. So I know that the hit rate's good here for Pascal Siakam. It's just not something I'm willing to play with. Now, another one which has an excellent hit rate, and I spoke about this in the last video, and hopefully you guys took that bet. I've spoken about it in the last couple of videos, and it's Klay Thompson. 3.5 points is his line. You just need 2 buckets from Klay in the first quarter. You can see here he's hit this in 9 out of 13 games. The problem in this one, it's got a somewhat difficult matchup here against OKC, who defend the perimeter quite well. If there is a weak spot in their defense, is they allow a lot of corner threes, and they're not very good at defending spot-up shooting, which is what Klay Thompson does. So I'm not completely off this play, but being transparent, I don't love it as much as the Vucevic and the Nas Reed play. The other one is someone that we've already spoken about, and it's Dyson Daniels. I did tell you guys I was thinking about this, but his first quarter points prop's been banging as a late. 4 straight games, 7 out of 11 games on the season, up against Portland, and he's got a pretty decent matchup. And his volume's pretty good in the first quarter. He's taking about 4 to 5 shots. We just need Dyson Daniels to make 2 of them in order to cash this line. Trae Young's a notoriously slow starter. So you could actually look at an under here for Trae Young in the first quarter. You could, because he hasn't been doing very well as of late, but Dyson Daniels has been. So, but I've already got a bet on Dyson Daniels, so I'm not overly excited to take another one. But here's another first quarter prop that might get your interest, and it's on SGA. Looking at it under 9.5 points against Dallas today. Now, you're getting pretty good odds for this. It's minus 110, minus 105 on ESPN bet. But just check out the numbers here. In 13 games this season, he's only gone over this twice. He's gotten very close to it, this 9.5. How many games has Chet been out for? Because obviously no Chet, higher usage rate for my man. And it's only been 3 games. So Chet's been out for 3 games. And in all 3 of those games, SGA scored 9 points in each of them. So the hit rate on this is amazing. The matchup against Dallas is somewhat difficult, but man, he'd be getting close to it. That's what I'm saying. I think it's a pretty good look, if you ask me, but it's going to be sweaty because this man can cook. Now, another under you may want to look at in the first quarter. Scary one, though, because it's Cade Cunningham up against the Washington Wizards. But just check it out. 5.5 points is his first quarter line. He's hit the over in 3 out of 14 games. He's gone under in 5 straight games in the first quarter. Problem is, this Washington team doesn't play defense. But Cade, just looking at his volume, right? If the line's at 5.5, he'd probably need to make 3 shots, I think, in order to cash this line. So he's probably going to need to attempt 5 to 6. And this game against the Bucks, he attempted 6, only made 2. But yeah, he may just not have the volume. Like, there's outlier games against Charlotte, Miami, and Cleveland where he shot the ball a lot and he shot at a high percentage. But I think on pure volume, if this line is at 5.5 every game for Cade Cunningham, I think the under could be a look because he's not taking 5 to 6 shots on a consistent basis. So yeah, I definitely lean that way. The hit rate is fantastic on it. I just don't know if I could get there. Now, somebody else who's a pretty slow starter in the first quarter that I've noticed is Julius Randle. Check this out. So his line's at 5.5 as well, same as Cunningham. And he's only gone over 3 out of 13 games. So 10 games he's gone under this season. And it's been 7 games in a row where Julius Randle has gone under 5.5 points. The odds for this are fantastic. You can get it for plus money in some places. Plus 110 on Bet365. Let's go. Now, for Julius Randle, same thing. You need to see like 6 shots. But it looks like his ceiling is close to 5. He's taken less than 6 shots in 12 out of the 13 games, right? So he's finishing on 5 quite a lot. I reckon you'd feel pretty unlucky if you bet the under 5.5 and he goes over. That's what I'm saying. So I think those are all good looks. Probably the best ones available now that I can think about it without diving in too hard. But let's get into our deep dive. Let's get into some massive hit rates and some key players from each team. All right, looking at Phoenix and the Timberwolves, obviously Anthony Edwards is someone we got to look at, right? So Anthony Edwards, firstly, let's look at his points prop. He's at 27.5 in this game against Phoenix. He's hit this in 6 out of 13 games, averaging 28 points per game on the season, scoring 20 points on a consistent basis. So that seems pretty safe for your bitch-ass parlays. What's his matchup like against Phoenix today? It's not bad. They're one of the worst teams in the league at defending the pick and roll. And Anthony Edwards scoring a lot of his points out of the pick and roll at the moment. Almost 10 points per game he's scoring out of the pick and roll. So he's got a good matchup there. In terms of defending above the break threes, Phoenix are adequate. They're pretty decent at defending it. Anthony Edwards, I think he's still going to get his opportunities to take all of his shots. But in order to tell you whether I think Anthony Edwards is going to go over, you really got to analyze all the other players in the team. So depending on Julius Randle, what's his matchup like? Julius Randle's got a tough matchup as well. Nas Reed, his matchup is somewhat difficult. Rudy Gobert down low, his matchup somewhat difficult. So yeah, given the fact that no one has a clear advantage here, I think that means someone like Ant's going to step up and really start pumping here. So I'd lean to the over. I wish Kevin Durant was playing because Anthony Edwards obviously loves playing against Kevin Durant. It's something I'd lean to the over on, but the data's not strong enough for me to want to take it. And I usually try to avoid such high point lines. Like the player could still play good and you could still lose. Like LaMelo Ball today, I took him over 27.5. His line dropped to 25.5 by the time the game started. He finishes on 26. So, yeah, these high lines, I try to steer away from them. So for Anthony Edwards, not overly excited to be betting that, if I'm being honest with you. And looking at the Phoenix Suns, let's take a look at Devin Booker. Now, I was already looking at this, looking at his numbers without Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, who are both missing in this game. He scored 18 points against the Kings, 12 points against OKC, up against Minnesota. He's got a pretty decent matchup around the pick and roll. If Rudy Gobert is going to be in drop coverage, Devin Booker is going to get some free looks outside of the screens. But in terms of how they defend above the break threes, it's a pretty tough matchup for Devin Booker here. So 25.5, I'd obviously lean to the under. The other pivot there is you could look at his assists, right? His points line and his assist line quite high when KD and Bradley Beal aren't there. But what I would honestly looking at here is probably his points plus assists and looking at the under. Because in order for him to cash his points plus assists, I think he's got to have an amazing game on one of those. And I just don't see it happening. Like he's had the opportunities against Sacramento. Sacramento's a pretty easy matchup for someone like Book. Didn't get it done. Had a lot of potential assists. They couldn't get buckets. Against OKC, that was a horrendous matchup. I bet he's under. I bet he's under 20 points, 21 and a half points. Like, definitely saw that one coming. Minnesota, not as good defensively this year as they were last year, but they're still very good at defending the perimeter. Devin Booker, not scoring a high volume of points in the paint anyway. So, yeah, looking at his points and his assists, looking at the under 32.5 there for D Book, I think that could be a really interesting look. All right, now looking at someone with a really good hit rate, you got to look at Naz Reid. I think he's hit this in his points line of 13.5 in 9 out of 13 games this season. And what's really interesting about this is if you just look at his games at home, fantastic. 6 games at home this season. He's covered this line in 5 out of the 6. The only game he went under was against the Raptors, where he played 21 minutes. In all the other games, he played more than 21 minutes. Didn't even make a 3-pointer in that one. But yeah, Naz Reid. Definitely don't hate the points prop. But I think because I'm going to be betting his first quarter points prop by the looks of it, I'm probably not going to bet his points prop. But for you guys out there who are probably interested in that, I think the points prop for Naz Reid could be real good. He's been hitting it quite well lately, been hitting it quite well at home. The matchup is not the best for him, but no one has a great matchup here against Phoenix. So someone's going to get points somewhere, somehow. And I think Naz Reid can definitely take advantage of that. Jumping in the next game, we've got the Miami Heat versus Indiana Pacers. Jimmy Butler is a game time decision for this one, but I think he suits up and he plays. But man, where do we start? Let's go with Tyrese Halliburton. Points prop 17.5, just scored 18 points against Miami. 7 for 14, quite efficient, but I don't think he played the fourth quarter. So he was definitely looking like he was going to go over that. Didn't happen. The spread in this game is only 2, so it should be a close game. Indiana favored by 2, so the book's thinking Indiana bounces back after losing that most recent game. So Tyrese could be in for a big game. Looking at his assist line, 9.5. He had 8 assists in that last game against them. Shit, like I probably lean to the over, but I haven't liked betting on Tyrese Halliburton all season. And being honest with you, I haven't really liked betting on most of the players in this damn game, unless I'm taking an under. But let's take a look at Miami. I think Tyler Hero could be a really interesting look because he's been playing very well lately. Now, his point line's at 23.5. Up into that last game against Indiana, he was scoring very well. Only scored 20 points against them, 6 for 16 from the field. I think the bet that I shared with you guys on Tyler Hero in that last game was take the under in his assists. It was at 6.5. He finished on 5, so easy money. And that was without Jimmy Butler. Now, Jimmy Butler looks like he's going to be back in this game. And if you can still catch Tyler Hero at 5.5, the under's a good look. But looking at the odds here, not great. Not great at all for Tyler Hero. So I definitely like the under in his assist prop. It's just the odds not giving us anything really nice. Now, if you want to talk about someone with an awesome hit rate, we've got to look at Benedict Mathurin. And I'm looking at his rebounds and assist prop. Look at this. Look at this. The line's at 7.5. He's covered in 7 out of 12 games. He had a 7-game stretch where he hit this in every single game. Then he just came up against Miami. It didn't happen. He played 29 minutes, had only 4 rebounds and 1 assist. 10 rebound chances and 5 potential assists. Prior to that, he was definitely getting much more rebound chances and just converting his rebounds and assists at a higher rate. Now, I think most players for Indiana, you'd expect to bounce back and be better in this game. They lost by 13. They're favored by 2 points in this follow-up game. So there could be a good bounce back. Miami, not very good at rebounding, and someone like Benedict Mathurin could take advantage of that. So the hit rate on this is great. I get that he only had 5 in that most recent game against Miami, but bounce backs are real. So Benedict Mathurin, I think his rebounds and assists could be a good look. I'll put it down as a lean for now. Some of the other ones I said I'm going to bet that shit straight away, but this one, I need to investigate it a little bit further before I make a call on that. All right, we're looking at the Hawks and the Blazers. The Hawks still missing a whole lot of players. The Blazers, DeAndre Ayton most likely out. Simons is out. So that means Scoot Henderson gets a start. Shaden Sharp probably sees more minutes. Jeremy Grant probably sees a whole lot of shot attempts. Remember, this Atlanta team doesn't play very good defense at all, so there could be some big games out of these Portland players. But let's talk about Trae Young for a minute. His line's at 24.5. He's only hit this in 5 or 12 games this season. The matchup, somewhat difficult here against Portland. They defend the pick and roll very well, but at the same time, they give up a lot of shots on the perimeter as well. But I think that means somebody outside of Trae Young could be making those shots. Maybe a Dyson Daniels, maybe this French rookie. So for Trae Young, his points prop I've got no interest in unless I'm looking at the under. But Portland, they don't really allow points in the paint, but yeah, weak on the perimeter. Defensive rating, they're pretty average. So don't want to take any unders on Trae Young just yet. His assist line's at 10.5. He's covered this in 7 out of 12 games. The potential assist volumes have come down slightly, and that's because Jalen Johnson has been diming up like a crazy bastard. Let's take a look at him. Jalen Johnson, points line at 19.5. I'm not interested in betting his points prop because Portland defend the paint quite well, and Jalen Johnson lives in there. Obviously, no DeAndre Ayton probably makes it a little bit easier, but looking at his assist prop, it's at 4.5. It's always at 4.5, which is wild. But the assist opportunity is probably going to be there. Portland, bottom 4 in the league in terms of assists allowed. We've got here similar types of players, 43% hit rate, so nothing major going on there. But Jalen Johnson can just really rack up some potential assists when he feels like it, especially if Trae Young's having a slow game. Could definitely make it happen, but it's hard to nail down just one singular pop for Jalen Johnson because he fills up the stat sheet. I think this rebounds one could be an interesting look. 10 out of 13 games, he's gone over 8.5 boards. The over's favored by the books, minus 130. In Portland, they do give up a lot of rebounds as well, given how shit their offense is, and missing some key pieces on the offensive end probably opens things up even further. So Jalen Johnson rebounds. I do like the over there. I just don't like the odds for it. So we may have to take his, I don't know, take him for over the rebounds and put it with 10 points, or over the rebounds and maybe 2 assists or something like that. But yeah, Jalen Johnson rebounds, I think is all right look. Now, if you want something with an awesome hit rate, you got to look at Trae Young, rebounds plus assists. He's hit this in 9 out of 12 games this season. He's averaging 15.3 rebounds and assists. Up against Portland, who give up a lot of assists, give up a lot of rebounds as well. So the matchup's nice here for Trae Young. Went under in that last game against Washington. Hasn't had back-to-back games going under his rebounds and assist line this whole season. Shit, so maybe Trae Young rebounds and assists I can get with. Because his assist prop alone, I don't absolutely love it, but he's capable of getting some random big rebounding games. So that's something I want to investigate a little bit further, but it's something I definitely lean to the over on. Trae Young over his rebounds and assists. So next up, we've got the Nuggets versus the Grizzlies. Nikola Jokic is a game time decision, which means probably won't take any bets on Denver right now because that Jokic thing changes a lot. And for Memphis, Marcus Smart is a game time decision, unlikely to play. So we're probably going to see a whole lot of Jaren Jackson Jr. in this one and maybe some Jalen Wells. But we'll take a look. We'll see what we can find, and then I'll give you some bangers and some hit rates. But let's take a look at Jaren Jackson Jr. With the right matchup, this man can eat. I think I bet on Jaren Jackson Jr. earlier not too long ago, and it was purely because since Ja Morant's been out, his usage rate has been through the roof. His matchup against Denver today. So he's scoring in transition, Denver top 12, and he scores in the paint, non-restricted area, but Denver quite soft in there. So Jaren Jackson Jr. points prop, that could be a really interesting one. I don't love it to death, but interesting nonetheless. And I wanted to see if they had lines for Jaden Wells, but they do not. We've got lines for Desmond Bain here. And there's no news on RotoWire about Desmond Bain. So betting on any Memphis players right now, I'll pump the brakes on. And for the Denver Nuggets, there's only lines available for Nikola Jokic, and man, you don't even need me to preview them. This guy just fills up the stat sheet, right? And yeah, he's got a tough scoring matchup against Memphis, but he's Nikola Jokic. I think he does whatever he wants when he wants. So we're going to have to pass on that. And in terms of things with an insane hit rate, what can I find for you? Well, I think it's got to be this. Scottie Pippen Jr., his PRA of 19.5. So these are numbers with Ja Morant out of the lineup. And Scottie Pippen Jr. has been feasting without Ja. The problem is, most recently up against the Warriors, struggled. Only had 9 points, rebounds, and assists, got 22 minutes. And that was a game with Desmond Bain returned from injury. So yeah, if Bain's not playing, then I think Scottie Pippen Jr., his PRA could be a good look. But if Bain is back in, I probably wouldn't get close to it at all. Next up is the Charlotte Hornets versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mentioned at the top that Donovan Mitchell is out. And for the Charlotte Hornets, Mark Williams, game time decision. He might play, but he looks pretty unlikely at the moment. So the Hornets going to continue to go small, I think, in that front court. And these Cleveland bigs, your Mobleys, your Allens, probably going to eat, but let's take a look at the numbers. Darius Garland, point signs at 21.5. First game without Donovan Mitchell this season, but last 2 games have been heating up, 25 and 29 points, covering this in 7 out of 14. The matchup for Garland, not the best one. Charlotte Hornets actually decent at defending the pick and roll ball handlers, and they are limiting points to in above the break. When they are weak as piss is right under the basket. Bottom 3 in the league in the restricted area. So I think if you're looking at points, it's got to be an Evan Mobley or a Jared Allen thing, right? Now, Evan Mobley scoring in transition. The Hornets not afraid to run. So I think Jared Allen probably the better matchup as the pick and roll man scoring in the restricted area. Yeah, this is your guy. This is the ideal matchup for Jared Allen. You can see the Charlotte Hornets, bottom 3 in defending the restricted area, bottom 2 in defending the pick and roll man. So if that big man's rolling to the rim, they're going to get feasted on by the looks of it. So Jared Allen has the best matchup here. He hasn't covered this number very well at all, though. So that's a question mark. But we might want to look at the games last season. Jared Allen without Donovan Mitchell. And what did he do? Last 20 games without Donovan Mitchell, cover this line in 14 of them. So yeah, I probably lean to the over here for Jared Allen. But this Cleveland team, and they can get points from anywhere, including their bench. So Jared Allen at 16.5. Maybe his rebounds line could be a good look. I'm not too sure about that. 11.5 seems pretty high, but he's hit that at 50% this season. This Hornets team, 4th fewest rebounds allowed. So maybe the rebounds prop's not the way. So I'm not loving anything in that. It seems too straightforward to bet on Jared Allen because he has a good matchup. The one thing I know is that the matchups are kind of factored into the line to some extent. So even though the matchup is great, it doesn't mean he's going to eat. Like we can use props madness here to find how Jared Allen's gone against the bottom 10 teams in defending the pick and roll and the bottom 10 teams defending the restricted area. And these are the teams that meet that profile. Washington, the Lakers, the Bulls, 76ers, right? So, and in these games, he's gone over in 3 out of 5, averaging 17.4 points. So in these games, you could have said he's got an ideal matchup as well. One of the best matchups you can find for him and still only hit them in 3 out of 5. So for that very reason, I'm probably not going to bet on Jared Allen. There are some players who eat whenever they have a great matchup and they suck when they don't. Jared Allen, he's a little bit difficult to read. So I'll pass on any of the Cleveland players, but let's talk about Charlotte. We've got LaMelo Ball, 26.5 points is the line on a back-to-back. I wonder how he's played in back-to-backs this season. There we go. 2 back-to-back games, Miami, Boston, 27 and 36 points. Up against Cleveland today, tough matchup. Cleveland defends the pick and roll quite well, and they're decent at limiting points to above the break. So LaMelo Ball doesn't have the best matchup, but if we look at LaMelo Ball against the teams that are good at defending the pick and roll, I want to know how he's performed so far this season. So if we look at the teams in the top half of the league, and he's managed to go over in the one game. So what's interesting here, right? LaMelo Ball this season has mostly had great matchups for his play type. That's what's calling out to me. That's why he's scoring so well. This Cleveland team, probably the most difficult matchup he's had all season. So some people are probably going to be game enough to bet his unders. I not game enough to do that because he probably still shoots the ball 20 times, but that might open up his assists. It might. So I'm not betting on LaMelo Ball based off what I'm seeing right here, but I'm just giving you another angle to consider. Now let's talk about hit rates. Someone with a dope hit rate is Miles Bridges. And for Miles Bridges, we're not looking at his points prop. We're looking at his rebounds plus assists. Look at this. Woo-hoo-hoo. Line's at 8.5, and he's hit this in 5 straight games now. 7 out of 9 games on the season, 9.3 as an average. Now, the matchup is awful. Cleveland don't give up assists. They don't give up rebounds. That's how good they are defensively. But given the Hornets are lacking some size, Miles Bridges has that leaping ability and probably helps them on the glass. So, yeah, he's going to be needed to get some boards, is what I'm going to say. The Hornets have been small all year, though. So the rebounds, not a massive surprise to me for Miles Bridges. But, yeah, can we take him up against Cleveland, though? That's my only concern. If we look at assists allowed, okay. So Minnesota don't allow too many assists. So that was a tough matchup. He still managed to go over. Rebounds allowed. Yeah, Minnesota's still a difficult matchup, and he still managed to get 10. Cleveland is the most difficult matchup he's had. So the hit rate is great here. I'm not willing to take it, though. Not just yet. I'll have to pass on that. So there's probably nothing outside of Mobley assists that I'm going to bet on from that game. Let's jump into the next one. It's the Washington Wizards and the Detroit Pistons. So no major changes in their lineups. Let's get into these big dogs, shall we? Let's look at Jordan Poole. Ain't nobody betting on Kyle Kuzma. So Poole's line's at 19.5. He's hit in 8 out of 11 games this season. So he's got a low line, probably because the matchup's difficult, or they're expecting Kuzma to take more buckets from him. Up against Detroit, not very good at defending the pick and roll. Jordan Poole scores a lot of points in the pick and roll, but they are pretty decent at defending the perimeter. You can see it here above the break 3. Detroit are a top 10 team. They're soft in the corners and in the paint as well. Jordan Poole, not necessarily his play style, so it probably does suit a Kyle Kuzma a little bit more, if I'm being honest with you. So, yeah, the matchup's somewhat difficult. That's why we're getting a lower line here for him. So, yeah, look, I think the line's just about right. I don't think there's an edge there at all. Quick look at his assists, and nobody gets excited talking about his assists. But out of curiosity, what do his assists look like with Kuzma? Just as I expected. So he's played 6 games with Kyle Kuzma in the lineup this season. He's gone over this line in 5 out of the 6 games. That's pretty cool. Now, it's pretty juiced to the over. So the sports books think he goes over as well. The odds for it aren't fantastic. So I'm not going to bet on Jordan Poole. But let's take a look at Kyle Kuzma. His points props at 20.5. He's only hit this in 2 out of 6 games this season. His matchup is awful against Detroit. He scores in transition and in the restricted area. And Detroit, pretty good at defending both of those things. Top 4 in defending the transition buckets. Top 5 defending the restricted area. So if it's not Jordan Poole and it's not Kyle Kuzma, who the hell is going to score all these points? Is it Bilal Coulibaly? His matchup, it's a little bit better, but he hasn't been performing since Kyle Kuzma came back. I'm just looking at these out of curiosity. Alex Sarr. So he scored 20 against Atlanta in that last game. 3 from 4 from deep. The Rook's starting to heat up. His line's at 9.5. Up against Detroit. Not the best at limiting spot up, but they do defend inside pretty well. But we can see similar players. So there's a lot of centers here who have done a great job destroying this Detroit team. Jakob Poeltl, Brook Lopez, Alperen Şengün, Jarrett Allen, Miles Turner, all absolutely cook their line. So 5 out of the 7 players went over their line when they played against the Detroit Pistons. So Alex Sarr could be that guy. Now, the one thing about Alex Sarr is he's always going to get the volume, which is pretty crazy. So these are the games with Kyle Kuzma. These are the games on the season. 7 out of 11 games he's hit the over. So I don't necessarily hate this. I think this is a real interesting one. If we think about the spot up, so Detroit, mid-range in terms of the spot up. Atlanta are soft as hell, so he killed them. But even in difficult matchups, he still managed to go over this line anyway. So I'm not overly concerned by that. And if we look at the restricted area, Orlando, very good at limiting points there. Sarr went over. Golden State, good at limiting points there, and he went over anyway. So, yeah, that could be an interesting one. Alex Sarr over his points prop. I've got that down as a lean. We'll see where I land with that. But let's talk about Detroit for a minute. And I'm already betting on Jalen Duren, but let's talk about Cade Cunningham. His point sign's at 24.5. He's got a pretty decent matchup to score some points today. I don't know if he's going to get or need the volume to score it though, to score the 25. That's my only hesitation with Cade Cunningham. Duran's going to get his buckets. Ivy's emerged as a 20-point per game scorer. Tobias Harris still chips in 15 whenever he can. So, yeah, I don't know if Cade Cunningham's going to need to, but what does get my attention is stuff like this, his assists. So he's covered his assist line of 8.5 in how many games is this? 7 straight games now. He's been an absolute beast, and he's up against Washington. They do allow the 10th most assists in the league, so the matchup's not a difficult one. Washington play very fast, so I think that all kind of blends into Cade. I'd lean to the over for his assist prop for sure. I just feel like this is a bit too straightforward for me to take, and that might be my ego. I might think there's a trap, but yeah, Cade Cunningham, I want to hate you if you bet the over on his assist prop. All right, now we're looking at the Mavericks versus the Thunder. That's going to be a good game to watch. If only I could watch it. I'll be busy working, unfortunately. But Luka's game time, so is PJ Washington, but most likely they play for OKC. Pretty much the same team. They're missing all their bigs. So Jalen Williams is going to be playing center again. We'll see what Dallas does to combat that. But what do we have? OKC still 5.5-point favorites in this game, which is pretty wild. So SGA's line's at 31.5. He's only hit this in 2 games this season. He's averaging 27.9 on the year. Games without Chet. There's been 3 games without Chet. He's gone 45, 29, 28. The games where he went under, those are pretty much blowout wins. They were well in control. Then SGA, the 30 ball wasn't needed. So look, I'd probably lean to the over here. I have to. But again, 31.5 is a very high line to catch. I'm not overly excited or interested by that. And then heading over to Dallas, you got to take a look at Luka. 27.5 seems like a pretty low line to me. He's hit this in 8 out of 13 games this season. His matchup is difficult. I get that. OKC, the best team at defending the pick and roll, and they limit above the break threes very well. But certain players, the matchup doesn't really matter to them. So I'm just interested to see Luka's numbers against OKC last season. So this is regular season, 36 and 32. And last season, OKC were pretty good at defending the pick and roll and limiting points above the break. They are better at it this year. But in saying that, it was a tough matchup last year. Luka cooked them. Then if you include the playoffs only, Luka only went over in 3 out of 6 games. So what OKC do is they do a really good job getting the ball out of his hands. So I've seen some people taking Luka's over like it was a lock, and I don't necessarily agree with that. His assist prop last season was a wagon. This season, not so much. His line's at 7.5, though. OKC top 10 in assists allowed. I don't know if I could get there. I can't bet an under for Luka today. I wish I did against the Spurs. That made so much sense to bet his under. He didn't need to do everything. And he might have been saving himself for this game against OKC. So not something I'm particularly fond in betting on. So Luka and SGA, hope you have a good game, but it's not something I want. I don't want that smoke. Now, if you want something with a pretty good hit rate, let's look at Kyrie Irving assists. Now, he's covered this in 4 straight games. 8 out of 12 games on the season. Lines at 4.5, minus 125 to the over. And now the Dallas Mavericks are on the road here. And check this out. On the road, Kyrie's covered this in every single game this season. Now, he's finishing on 5 a lot of the time. So if you do take this bet, even if it cashes, I think it's going to be real sweaty. The hit rate is awesome on it. I don't know if I'm going to bet it, to be honest. I think maybe Klay Thompson first quarter points, probably all I bet in this game, perhaps. Maybe a Derek Lively or maybe a Daniel Gafford play, but I've got to wait till their lines open up. They're not available at the moment. So I'll have to pass on that. Now we have the Rockets versus the Bulls. I usually look forward to the Bulls games to bet, but I'm not overly excited by a lot of these games with Houston on it, to be honest. But Chicago pretty much have the same lineup. Giddey, White, Levine, Vucevic, they're all playing. And for Houston, Steven Adams is out. Eamon Thompson is a game-time decision as well. But Houston are tough as hell to bet on, man. Like Fred can go off, points, rebounds, assists. Jalen Green can do points, rebounds, and assists. Dylan Brooks can score a lot of points at times. Jabari Smith can get a lot of points and a lot of rebounds. And Alperen Sengun can get points, rebounds, and assists. Eamon Thompson off the bench can get a lot of points, rebounds, and assists. It's just a fucking circus when it comes to betting because you don't know who's going to put the numbers out. Whereas Chicago, probably easier to predict. But let's talk about some key plays for a second. Now, I want to talk about Jalen Green purely because I know a lot of people are betting on him. Now, Jalen Green's point sign's at 21.5. He's gone under this line in fucking so many games. What, 8 straight games he's gone under this. And he does have a good matchup here against the Chicago Bulls, won't lie. Best matchup he's had since the Spurs game 10 days ago. But there's a great matchup against the Spurs and he still went under. And he's got a great matchup against the Bulls. The problem here is that it's not like Jalen Green's just like been playing bad. It's just there are other players who can get buckets. Bloody Tari Eason off the bench can get a whole lot of buckets too. So it's like, is Jalen Green going to be required to score 22 points? That's my hesitation. It's why I'm not betting on it. And I thought I'd share that with you all. Now, looking at the Chicago Bulls, is there anything we'd want to call out here? Let's look at Zach's points real quick. Points on 20.5, 7 out of his 10 games this season. Struggled against the Cavs. That was a difficult matchup for him. He was 4 for 16 up against the Houston Rockets. And I hate to say it, but he's got a very difficult matchup again. It's probably very similar to the Cleveland matchup. It's going to be tough. He's going to have to play a lot of one-on-one if he's going to score. So I think that might be a little bit difficult for him. I think about Kobe White as a spot-up shooter. The matchup's going to be tough, but for some reason, Kobe White difficult matchups seems to make it happen. 29 points against Cleveland, and that was a tough ass matchup. So I wouldn't put it past him. Despite how hard the matchup is, he probably can still get over. Vucevic is a wagon. 18.5 points is his line. He's hit this in 9 out of 13 games. It was at 17.5 in that last game against Cleveland. That was easy money. The matchup for him is not too bad. Houston, not very good at defending the pick and roll, man. So yeah, Nikola Vucevic, I always lean to his overs. Like what I have been running is what? Vucevic, 15 points, and Josh Giddey, 5 assists. But I don't believe there's any markets available for Josh Giddey at the moment. So yeah, for Vucevic, I know I'm going to bet his first quarter points prop. That's a fact. Outside of that, I've got no other bets down for this. I'm just checking to see if there's any amazing hit rates here that I can share with you on these two teams. And it's actually on Zach LaVine. I did notice something that last game against Cleveland. Even though he didn't score very well, rebounds and assist volumes off the charts. He had 13 of those suckers, 4 rebounds, 9 assists from 11 potentials. So if Zach's not going to be scoring, he's still going to have a high usage rate, still have his hands on the ball. So if Josh Giddey, he's not listed as a game time decision, so I don't understand why his props aren't available. But Zach LaVine at home has covered this rebounds and assist line in every single game. But even if you just remove that on the season and as of late, he's been getting those boards and getting those dimes. Like the potential assist numbers are pretty high, which are pretty good. I wonder what his assist line is. 3.5 for Zach. So he's had some standout games. Looking at his rebounds, it's pretty up and down. So the safe play is rebounds and assists. Because I can't tell you whether he's going to rebound or get a lot of assists here against this Houston Rockets team. But yeah, that's not a bad look. Zach LaVine over 8.5 rebounds and assists. Pretty decent odds, plus 100. Thank you. All right, let's move to the next one. We've got the Brooklyn Nets versus the New York Knicks. Now, these guys just played each other not too long ago. But the difference here is Karl-Anthony Towns looks like he might play. Jalen Brunson, let's take a look at him. Scored 37 in that last game against them. He was 12 from 20, extremely efficient, and got to the free throw line as well. But if Karl-Anthony Towns is going to play, it kind of changes everything, right? Cat's been there for the majority of the season, and Jalen Brunson hasn't gone close to this. So we don't have a big enough sample size with Cat out of the lineup. And the sample size of Cat in the lineup tells us that we shouldn't bet the over here for Jalen Brunson. So I'd probably pass on Jalen Brunson. I spoke to you guys about the Josh Hart assists, but Mikal Bridges, the points prop, could be an interesting one. 17.5 is a little bit high. Did score 22, but again, there was no Cat, and he took 17 shots in that game. So Mikal Bridges, I could lean that way. But if we're talking about the Brooklyn Nets, you got to talk about Cam Thomas. Scored 43 points against the New York Knicks most recently, 16 from 22, efficient as hell. This was a game where I actually picked him I picked him for 30 and 35. I wish I would have hit that 40, but, hindsight is a bitch. Now let's talk about it. He's got a great matchup. So part of the reason why I took that bet, great matchup here for Cam Thomas. The New York Knicks, terrible at defending pick and roll ball handlers, terrible at defending above the break right now because Karl-Anthony Towns plays in drop coverage. And even Jericho Sims with the bench plays in drop coverage as well. So I definitely would bet Cam Thomas over. My only question is, do the Knicks switch up their defense to do something to slow down Cam Thomas because he absolutely killed them. But then my other thought is like you had all game to switch shit up. Like you should have switched it up earlier than that. But yeah, that's my only hesitation. But I do like the look for Cam Thomas to go over. And if you're talking about hit rates and consistency, I think there's none better than Josh Hart and his assist prop right now. So I'm not going to bore you and take you through too much. Let's get into the last game. It's the Utah Jazz versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Walker Kessler, I think he's a game time decision with Lauri Markkanen, so we don't know if they're going to play. They're obviously on a back-to-back game today. The Clippers well rested, so we'll see how they go. So we're going to take a look at James Harden. Points lines at 21.5. Just fell under in 2 games against Houston. Only played 31 minutes in both of those games. So once again, didn't play in the fourth. But that was due to a blowout. Up against Utah, he's got a tough matchup in terms of isolation. But he does have a good matchup when it comes to shooting zones. Utah terrible at defending the perimeter. So they're going to give James all the room in the world to step back all over the place. But after James Harden being shit 2 games in a row, I don't know if I can take him in this one. So James Harden, assist perhaps. His line's at 7.5. His assist numbers have definitely come down as this season has progressed. He started like on fire, but it could be a little bit of fatigue. He's got to carry the hell out of this team. Hasn't been doing it much at all. But knowing the Jazz and their defense, right? The Jazz don't defend the perimeter very well. That automatically makes me think of this man, Norman Powell. Norman Powell had 2 terrible games against the Houston Rockets, and that's because the matchup was awful for him. Norman Powell scores in transition, and he scores in above the break threes, and you can see how green this freaking bar is. Utah, terrible at all of those things. So, yeah, they're the dead last in transition defense, and they're bottom 3 in defending above the break. So, Norm Powell, if we look at the previous games, this is the transition game. The Rockets, pretty good at limiting points in transition. They're top 10. And if we look at above the break threes, the Rockets, top 10 there as well. So tough-ass matchup. Heading into Utah Jazz into one of the easiest matchups he's going to have all season. Shit, I like it. Give me Norm Powell. I'm going to write that down right now. Norm Powell, over on points. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, do we want to talk about Utah? Because I couldn't tell you what the hell is going to happen, man. Like, let's talk about Lauri for a second. He scored 25 against the Kings today, back-to-back. He's a game-time decision anyway. Up against the Clippers, tough defense. But Lauri, his matchup's not too difficult, so he can definitely get over there. But, yeah, nothing from Utah honestly excites me. All these guards that they have all do the same type of shit, so I don't know who's going to do what. But let's talk about Zubac for a second. He's gone a little bit quiet, similar to James Harden. I think Zubac's going to go as James Harden does. Harden started off on fire and so did Zoo, and they both started to slow down a little bit. The matchup for Zoo somewhat difficult. If Walker Kessler does play, there's another big body down there for him to bang with. Rebound-wise, line's at 11.5. Utah not giving up a ton of rebounds. That's because they give up points. But, yeah, I'm not – if anything, I probably lean to the under on Zoo, but they're well-rested. He could have a big game here. I'm not too confident in it. I think in this game, Norm Powell is definitely my guy. Well, it looks like I kept my promise. Get the video under an hour. My voice is still killing me, but I've got my trusty B here. So cheers to you and cheers to me. Oh, shit. I'm still recording. Reminders. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Check out Props Madness. Honestly, it's a fun tool to use if you like betting on NBA player props. And if you're interested in checking out every single bet that I make, you can sign up to the VIP. Use the code WEBACK, and you'll get 50% off any subscription plan that you choose, whether it's weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or yearly. You'll get 50% off on that. But thanks for watching the video, guys. Best of luck to you, and best of luck to us. Let's go.